Single dad. Tried to stop his daughter from playing chess, but her first move. Left the CEO in tears. Sir, you're not supposed to be on this floor. The woman in the sharp black suit stood like a statue in front of the elevator, arms crossed her eyes, scanning Owen Bennett from head to toe with subtle disapproval. Her voice was clipped, her heels louder than her words. Owen adjusted the heavy tool bag on his shoulder and offered a polite smile. Printer emergency. Room 47A. I was told it's urgent. The woman raised an eyebrow. 47A is the executive floor. I figured, judging by the marble floors and the tension in the air, Owen replied, lightly glancing around. Look, I'll be out of here as soon as I fix your CFO's printing tantrum. Just point me to the machine. The woman didn't answer. Instead, her gaze shifted to the small figure standing quietly behind Owen, her hand clutching his tool belt. Is that your daughter? Yeah. He gave a sheepish grin. Babysitter bailed. School's closed. And I can't exactly leave an 8-year-old alone at home. Don't worry, she'll sit quietly and read. Won't touch a thing. The woman hesitated. Then, without a word, she stepped aside. Thanks, Owen said, nodding as he stepped through the thick glass doors. What he didn't know was that a set of eyes, sharp calculating and hidden behind smoked glass walls, had just spotted something unexpected in the middle of her sterile world. The executive lounge at Carrington Enterprises gleamed like something out of a modern art museum. Chrome accents, floor-to-ceiling windows, a coffee bar better stocked than most restaurants, and at the center of the room, a low table with a dazzling crystal chess set, its pieces catching the sunlight like diamonds and obsidian. Wow, Arya whispered, eyes wide. She looked up at her father, unsure. Can I? No, Owen said gently but firmly. That's not ours. Just sit over there, okay? Finish your book. I won't be long. He ruffled her hair, dropped a kiss on her forehead, and disappeared into the glass hallway, following the signs to the printer. Arya took a seat. For a moment, she did read. But the pieces, those beautiful pieces they called to her like old friends waiting to speak. She glanced around. No one seemed to be watching. Her tiny fingers reached out gently, lifting a knight, feeling the cold weight of it. And that's when the voice came. You know how that one moves? Arya gasped and dropped the piece, catching it just before it hit the board. She turned to see a woman standing there tall, poised in a perfectly cut white blazer and heels that clicked like thunder on the tiles. I'm sorry, Arya stammered. I wasn't going to break it. I was just looking. The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she studied Arya with eyes like glassy steel eyes that had stared down CEOs, board members, and foreign dignitaries without blinking. You're not in trouble, she said at last. I just asked a question. Do you know how the knight moves? Arya nodded slowly. It moves in an L shape, 2 up, 1 to the side, or 2 over, 1 up. The woman tilted her head. That's correct. Impressive. I learned from a book, Arya added. It had missing pages. That made the woman's eyebrow twitch just slightly. You play often. No, Arya said. Only in my head. The woman stepped closer to the table. Would you like to play just one game? Arya blinked. With you. The woman gave a half smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Yes, with me. 10 minutes later, Owen returned to find his daughter sitting across from the most powerful woman in the building. Sloane Carrington, he breathed under his breath, frozen mid-step. He recognized her instantly. Everyone in the city did. Billionaire heiress, CEO, known for firing people mid-meeting if they wasted her time. What was she doing talking to his daughter? He rushed forward. I'm so sorry, ma'am. Arya, sweetheart, we need to go. She's fine, Sloane interrupted, not taking her eyes off the board. Your daughter has a sharp mind. Owen looked from the board to his daughter, who was biting her lips, staring hard at the pieces like she could see something no one else did. She's 8, he said. Sloane moved a rook with surgical precision. So was Mozart when he composed his first symphony. She's just a kid. She's something else, Sloane murmured almost to herself. Arya didn't speak. She was too focused. And then 5 moves later she set her queen down gently and said, "Check." Sloane sat back. A long pause. "Check indeed," she said softly. Owen exhaled. "Okay, seriously, what's going on here?" Sloane finally looked at him. For a moment her eyes softened. "She's gifted," she said. "Would you let her come back just to play another game?" Owen hesitated. Every instinct told him to say no. But Arya looked up at him with those bright eyes that had seen too much disappointment in her short life. "Please, Daddy," she whispered. He rubbed the back of his neck. "I don't know. We're not exactly. This world." Sloane leaned in slightly. "Neither was I. Not really." And something in her voice almost imperceptible made Owen pause. There was more here. Something deeper. Something she wasn't saying. He looked at Arya, then at the woman across from her. "One game," he said. "Just one." Sloane nodded. But as Arya turned back to the board, smiling, Sloane's eyes remained on her unblinking, unmoving, like she was staring at something long lost. Or someone. And for the first time in years, Sloane Carrington felt something crack beneath her polished surface. Hope, recognition, and something dangerously close to regret. Owen was quiet on the drive home. Arya sat in the backseat legs, swinging her backpack on her lap and her fingers still clasped together like they were holding invisible chess pieces. "Daddy," she said softly, "was that lady mad at me?" He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "No, sweetheart. She wasn't mad. She was surprised, because I almost beat her." "You gave her a real scare." Owen smiled faintly. "But she's not the kind of person who gets scared easily." Arya nodded thoughtfully, then asked, "Who is she?" Owen sighed. "Her name's Sloane Carrington. She's the CEO of Carrington Enterprises. Is that big?" "It's one of the biggest," he said. "The kind of big that owns floors in every building you see downtown." Arya's eyes widened. "So she's like, really rich?" "Yeah, but money doesn't make someone worth admiring, kiddo." She tilted her head. "Then what does Owen's fingers tighten slightly around the steering wheel? How they treat people when they don't have to be kind." Arya thought about that. Then she looked out the window, her voice a whisper. "She was kind to me." The next morning, Owen found a message waiting on his phone. From Sloane Carrington. "Thank you for bringing Arya yesterday. I hope she enjoyed the game. If she's interested, I'd love to invite her to my home this weekend. No obligations, just another match. Let me know." Owen stared at the message like it was written in a foreign language. He didn't know what shocked him more, that Sloane Carrington remembered his daughter's name, or that she sent a message that didn't sound like a command. He picked up the phone, started typing a reply, deleted it, typed again. Then he walked out into the kitchen where Arya was buttering toast with way too much enthusiasm. "Hey, Ari," he said. "That lady from yesterday, she wants to play again." Her face lit up like someone had flipped a switch. "Really, she invited you to her house this weekend." Arya blinked. "A real house. Like a mansion." "Yeah," Owen said. "A mansion." She set down her knife carefully. "Are you going to say yes?" He looked at her. Really looked. There was something about his daughter, this quiet fire that lived behind her eyes. She'd always been different, precise, curious, and alone in a way he never quite knew how to reach. "I don't know," he said. "It's not our world, baby." "But I don't care about worlds," Arya said simply. "I just like the way the pieces felt in my hands." That stopped him cold. She wasn't chasing luxury. She was chasing joy. And what kind of father would he be if he stood in her way? Sloane Carrington's estate looked more like a private museum than a home. The gates opened silently. The driveway curved past manicured lawns, and a fountain taller than their apartment building sparkled in the midday sun. Owen parked his aging sedan beside a row of black luxury cars and tried not to think about how out of place they looked. He reached for Arya's hand, but she was already out of the car staring at the house with her mouth slightly open. "Is this even real?" she whispered. He chuckled. "Feels like a movie set, huh?" But Sloane was real enough when the grand oak doors opened. She stood there in a navy blue blouse, hair pinned up, no makeup, just eyes that scanned them carefully before softening. "I'm glad you came," she said. Her voice was gentler today. "Didn't feel like I had much choice," Owen muttered. "Someone offers my daughter a game of chess in a palace. Kind of hard to say no. I'm not trying to impress her. You don't have to." Their eyes locked for a moment. There was tension, but not unkind. Just history that hadn't been written yet. The game was set in a sunroom filled with books, soft light, and glass walls looking out onto the sea. The chess set was even more magnificent than the one at Carrington HQ, gold leaf inlays, hand-carved pieces from Italy. But Arya didn't notice any of that. She sat down, folded her hands, and waited. "Black or white?" Sloane asked. White Arya smiled. "Always white." "I like starting things." They played in silence for the first 5 moves. Then Sloane said softly, "You see the whole board before you move, don't you?" Arya nodded. "It's like the pieces talk. Not out loud. Just, they want to be somewhere. And how do you know where that is?" "I don't," she said. "I just feel it." Sloane sat back. Her throat tightened and she looked away quickly. "Your daughter," she said to Owen, who stood nearby watching, "is exceptional. She's just Arya." Owen replied, "She thinks in patterns. Always has. You ever get her tested?" "For giftedness." "No. What for?" "So someone can stick a label on her and make her feel like a freak." Sloane looked over sharply. "Being gifted doesn't make you a freak." "No, but it makes the world expect you to be someone you're not." There was pain in his voice, and Sloane heard it. "I'm not trying to take her," she said quietly. "I didn't say you were. I just want to understand her. You're not the only one." They went silent again, but Arya didn't notice. She was too focused, too lost in the dance of bishops and knights and possibilities. Until suddenly she smiled. Check. Sloane stared at the board. "You trapped me," she said. Arya's eyes twinkled. "You taught me how yesterday." Sloane looked up, and for the first time something raw and unguarded passed over her face. "I haven't taught anyone anything in years," she said, "but maybe it's time I start again." Owen folded his arms. "What exactly do you want with my daughter?" Ms. Carrington Sloane turned toward him, and this time she didn't hide behind wealth or pride or perfectly chosen words. "I don't know," she said, "but when she sat at that board yesterday, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. What myself," she said softly, "only freer, lighter, unbroken." Owen didn't respond, because deep inside something about that felt true and terrifying, and maybe the beginning of something neither of them expected. Later that evening, after the sun dipped below the water and the sky turned lavender, Arya stood alone in Sloane Carrington's library. Her small fingers traced the edge of a bookshelf lined with first editions. The room smelled like old paper and polished wood. Through the tall windows the waves whispered secrets only the night could hear. She turned toward the marble chessboard still left untouched since their afternoon game. "May I?" she asked softly, sensing Sloane behind her. Sloane had been watching her from the doorway. Of course she replied, "It's your board now." Arya smiled and sat beginning to place the pieces exactly as they were during the middle of their last match. "I've been thinking about this position," she murmured mostly to herself. "You moved your bishop here," she pointed, "but if you'd waited one more turn your queen could have pinned my rook. Then I would have had to give up my knight to protect the king." Sloane approached slowly. "You're analyzing what I should have done." Arya nodded. "I replay the games in my head sometimes. Even when I sleep, I see new things." Sloane sat across from her, hands folded. You see patterns where others don't. That's what my teacher says. But sometimes, the patterns aren't just on the board. Sloane tilted her head. What do you mean? Arya hesitated, then asked, Do you ever feel like someone's missing from your life? Like there's a space in your chest that's shaped like a person but you don't know who they are? The question hit Sloane like a quiet blow to the heart. I used to feel that way, she said. What made it go away, Sloane's voice caught in her throat. I thought I buried it, but sometimes even the pieces you sacrifice still haunt the game. Arya looked up at her confused but curious. Do you mean someone you loved? Sloane nodded. Did they love you back, I think, so Sloane whispered. But I didn't let them stay long enough to prove it. The silence stretched between them. Then Arya asked a question that neither of them expected. Do I remind you of her? Sloane blinked. What? The person you lost. Sloane looked into the girl's face, so young, so brave, and yet holding something impossibly ancient behind her eyes. You remind me of someone I was too scared to become, Sloane said quietly. Arya smiled a little sad. My dad says bravery isn't loud. It's quiet. It's when you show up anyway. Sloane swallowed hard. Your dad's a wise man. He's the best man I know, Arya said proudly, even if he doesn't own a mansion. And that was the moment Sloane realized just how little her wealth meant in that room. Downstairs, Owen stood in the Carrington kitchen with a glass of water in his hand, staring at the walls lined with chrome and silence. It was too clean, too perfect, like no one had ever truly lived in it. Do you ever cook in here? He asked when Sloane came down to join him. She leaned against the counter. Not unless it comes in a box labeled Reheat. He gave a dry chuckle. Figures. Sloane hesitated. She's remarkable, Owen. I wasn't exaggerating earlier. I know. She sees the board like an architect. She doesn't memorize, she understands. That's rare. No one taught her that. No, he said. Not unless you count rainy days and my old chess book from college. You used to play. Yeah, Owen said, back when I had the time to lose. Sloane looked at him. What did you give up? He met her eyes. A master's degree, a career in design, job offers that required relocation, everything I thought I wanted. Why? Because one day someone left a baby on my doorstep with a note that said, You're the only one I trust. His jaw tightened. I didn't ask questions. I just held her, and everything else fell into place. Sloane inhaled slowly. You adopted her, not legally. I was her mother's cousin. Her mom passed unexpectedly. No father on the record, just me. And you never looked into where she came from, why she was left with you. She was a baby, Owen said, and I was the only thing standing between her and the system. I didn't care where she came from. I only cared where she'd go. Sloane was quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, And yet, here she is, in the one place she was never supposed to find. Owen stiffened. What do you mean? Sloane turned away, biting her bottom lip. I've seen those eyes before, she said finally. In a mirror. 8 years ago. Owen's voice dropped. Sloane, what are you saying? But before she could answer, Arya appeared at the top of the stairs. Daddy? She called, her voice light. Can we go now? Yeah, baby, Owen replied, forcing steadiness into his voice. Get your coat. Sloane didn't move. Her hands trembled on the marble counter. You were going to tell me something, Owen said, low and firm. Sloane glanced up, eyes wet. Not tonight. Not yet. He stared at her. I don't play games with people's lives, Miss Carrington. And I don't play games I can't win, she whispered. They locked eyes. Something unspoken passed between them, a wound both shared but neither understood. Then she said softly, Bring her back next weekend. Please. Owen nodded once, but as they stepped out into the cool night air, Arya looked back. Sloane stood at the window unmoving, watching, and in that moment Arya didn't know why, but she felt like she had just left a place she'd once belonged to long, long ago. Sloane Carrington never did anything without a reason. Every move she made in business was calculated, timed, and weighed. She didn't believe in accidents, only consequences. But as she sat alone in her private office staring at the manila envelope on her desk, even she couldn't pretend she had expected this. She picked it up slowly. Inside, a single-page DNA result stamped with a corporate logo and a barcode. At the top, Sample A. Area Bennett below, that Sample B, Sloane Carrington. At the bottom, in bold black letters, probability of maternity 99.99998%. Sloane dropped the paper like it burned her fingers. 8 years. 8 years of silence. 8 years of pretending she had made peace with her decision. And now the truth was staring back at her with Arya's eyes. 9 years ago. She hadn't meant to fall in love. Not with Jameson, not with the idea of a family, and certainly not with the fragile flutter in her belly when the test turned positive. But her father, the late Harold Carrington, had called it a scandal. Unmarried, pregnant, with a man who writes music for a living. What kind of legacy is that she'd tried to fight? But Jameson left broken by her hesitation. And when the pressure became unbearable, her family's lawyers had stepped in. "We'll handle it," they said. Quietly. She'll be adopted by someone trustworthy. No media, no mess. Sloane had signed the papers with tears on her cheeks and ink on her fingertips, and then spent the next 8 years pretending she hadn't made the biggest mistake of her life. Until Arya sat across from her moving chess pieces like they were old friends. And the eyes. God, the eyes. The same storm-gray color that stared back at her in the mirror every morning. Sloane pressed her palms against her face and whispered, "What have I done?" At the Bennett apartment, Owen was rewiring a bedside lamp with one hand while helping Arya with a crossword puzzle with the other. "You know the capital of Wyoming?" he asked. Cheyenne Arya said instantly. He looked at her. "How do you know that I read your old atlas last week?" "Of course you did," he muttered, smirking. "Anything else I should know about? Are you secretly learning calculus while I sleep?" She shrugged. "It's kind of boring." He snorted, but as she leaned back against the wall, something flickered across her face. Quiet. Thoughtful. "Daddy." "Yeah. Do you think I'm weird?" He turned fully toward her. "Where did that come from?" "People at school don't understand me. Even my friends. Emma said I talk too much about chess and patterns. And one time she asked me if I was from space." Owen set down the screwdriver. "Come here." She scooted over and he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Arya, listen to me. The world will always be a little afraid of people who see it differently. That doesn't make you weird. It makes you special." She leaned her head on his chest. "Ms. Carrington doesn't think I'm weird." He tensed slightly. She said I remind her of someone she lost. Owen didn't answer right away. "What if she wants to keep me?" Arya asked quietly. His voice was steady, but his heart stung. "You're not something people keep, baby. You're someone people earn." That night, long after Arya fell asleep, Owen dug through the old shoebox in the closet, the one with the letters, the birth record, the adoption forms that were never quite official. He pulled out the only photo he had of Arya as a baby. The handwriting on the back was still clear. "Her name is Arya. Please love her like I couldn't." There was no signature, just a date. He'd always wondered about that line, like I couldn't. Now a name stirred uneasily in his mind. Sloane Carrington. He reached for his phone, searched her name, and what he found made his stomach turn cold. Archived news. Rumors from nearly a decade ago. Carrington heiress cancels engagement. Rumored pregnancy quietly disappears from public view. Then a name, Jameson Wilder, a composer who'd vanished after a messy breakup. The timing lined up. The location. Even the child's age. Owen whispered no. He looked at the sleeping girl in the next room. He had built his whole world around her, and now it felt like someone was slipping the ground out from under his feet. Back at the Carrington estate, Sloane opened the nursery. The room had never been used. Her housekeeper had once asked about it. "Just leave it," she'd said. "It's no one's room." But now she stepped inside for the first time in years. The pale wallpaper was untouched. The crib still assembled. A single stuffed bear sat on the shelf. Sloane picked it up and held it to her chest. And wept. Not just for what she'd lost, but for what might never be hers again. The next morning she stood by the window as her assistant entered. "Ma'am, your 10 o'clock, cancel it." "But it's cancel it," she said, her voice steel again. Then she picked up her phone and dialed. "Dr. Whitaker, I need to talk. About parental rights? No, not hypothetical. Very real, and very delicate." She paused. "Also, find someone. Jameson Wilder. I need to know where he is." Her reflection stared back at her in the glass, poised, powerful, precise. But inside, she was crumbling. Because for the first time in her life, Sloane Carrington had no idea what her next move should be. And worse, she knew this wasn't her game anymore. It was Aria's. And Owen's. And maybe, just maybe, she'd already lost. The flyer arrived in a navy blue envelope, crisp and gold embossed like something from another world. Owen turned it over in his calloused hands and read aloud, "Young Masters Invitational, New York City. Ages 8 to 16. By nomination only." He blinked. "Is this real?" Sloane Carrington stood at the other end of the workshop, her posture straight but her eyes softer than usual. "It's very real. The most prestigious children's chess tournament in the country. Invitations don't come by mail. They come by reputation." He looked up, brows furrowed. "You nominated her?" "No," Sloane said quietly. "She nominated herself. With every move she's made since she sat across from me." Owen exhaled slowly. "You think she's ready?" "She's beyond ready." He looked down again at the flyer, and for a moment all he saw was Aria at the kitchen table playing with a board missing 3 pawns and a rook making moves that even he didn't understand. She's still just a kid. Then let her shine before the world tells her to dim. Owen looked at Sloane sharply. "What do you get out of this?" There was no accusation in his voice, just weary honesty. Sloane didn't blink. "I don't want anything from her. Not a headline, not a contract, not a trophy. I only want a chance to be near the miracle I lost." Owen's jaw clenched. "You still haven't told her. I don't want to shatter her world. You already did. Years ago. You just didn't stay long enough to hear it break." The silence between them thickened. Then Sloane said quietly, "Let her go to New York. Let her play. If you still think I'm a threat after that, I'll disappear." Owen was quiet for a long moment. Then he folded the flyer in half, slid it into his jacket, and walked past her. "I'll talk to her." Later that night, Owen sat beside Aria on the fire escape outside their apartment. The city lights blinked around them soft and far away. "I have a question," he said. She looked up. "Yeah. How would you feel about going to New York?" Aria blinked. "For what?" "There's a tournament. Big one. Kids from all over. You'd get to play against the best." Her eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Really, they'd let me in. They already did." Her mouth dropped open. "Wait, what? Who Sloane nominated you? They accepted." Aria didn't speak for a moment. Then she whispered, "Do you think I'm good enough?" Owen turned to her, his voice steady. "I think you're better than good enough. I think you're the kind of good that makes people look twice at the world." She looked down. "I don't want to lose." "Then don't play for the trophy," he said gently. "Play for the girl who saw a chessboard and felt like she finally understood something." Aria nodded, slowly, but a thought pulled at her. "Will you come with me?" she asked. Owen laughed softly. "Are you kidding? I wouldn't miss it for the world." She paused again. "What about—" Her Owen went still. Ms. Carrington Aria clarified. Will she come too? She might, he said slowly. Would that bother you? Arya looked out at the street below. I don't think so. When she watches me play, I feel like I matter. Owen swallowed hard. You matter to me every second, even when you're not winning anything. I know, she said, leaning against his arm. But with her, it's like I matter in a way I can't explain. And Owen understood, not because he had the words for it, but because he'd seen it too. The way Sloane looked at Arya was not performance. It was grief, recognition, and something that looked too much like love to ignore. They flew to New York 3 weeks later. The tournament was held in a marble-floored atrium at the Manhattan Grand Hotel. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen fireworks, and rows of pristine chessboards gleamed beneath velvet ropes. Kids in blazers, coaches with clipboards, parents with nerves and money, and in the middle of it all, Arya Bennett in sneakers and a hoodie, eyes-wide fingers twitching with anticipation. Sloane arrived just before the first match. She wore no makeup, just a charcoal coat and a quiet look that made Owen pause. You came, he said. I said I would. Arya spotted her across the room and waved. Sloane hesitated, then raised a hand back. Her voice trembled. She looks happy. She is, Owen said, and terrified, and focused, and full of hope. Like a warrior, she whispered. Owen nodded, like someone who's never had the luxury of being small. They stood in silence together as Arya sat at her board for round 1. Her opponent was 12, confident, smirking. But 10 minutes into the match, that smirk faded. Sloane leaned toward Owen. She's setting a trap. Owen nodded, knight to c5. Sloane's eyes widened. How did you? I've played that move 1,000 times at our kitchen table. Sloane looked at him differently then, not with competition, with awe. She gets it from both of us, she said softly. Owen didn't reply, but inside something cracked open, a possibility he hadn't allowed himself to consider. Not yet. Arya won the match in 34 moves, and as she walked back toward them, holding her first tournament ribbon in both hands, she beamed. I did it, she said. I really did it. Sloane crouched down to meet her at eye level. You did, she said, voice husky, and I've never seen anything more beautiful. Arya blushed. Thanks. Sloane looked like she wanted to say more, but Owen stepped forward, and for the first time ever, Sloane stepped back. She understood. Some games you don't play to win. You play to honor the pieces that got you here, and to wait, just wait until the board is ready. Rain lashed against the hotel windows like the sky had something to grieve. Inside the tournament hall, the air was thick with whispers and tension. Arya sat still, her palms flat on her knees, eyes fixed on the board in front of her. Across from her sat her next opponent, Mateo Rivera, 10 years old, a national junior finalist from Miami. Sharp, fast, precise. He'd already beaten 2 of the top-seeded players, and he played like he had something to prove. Owen stood in the viewing area, hands in his pockets, heart pounding with every ticking second of the game clock. Sloane stood beside him. Her arms were crossed, but her knuckles had gone white. She's nervous, Owen said softly. She's focused, Sloane replied, but even she didn't believe it completely. Arya's fingers hovered over her queen. She looked at the board like a painter staring at a canvas mid-stroke, uncertain whether the next line would ruin everything or make it magic. Then she moved. A risky exchange. A sacrifice. Mateo didn't flinch. He pounced. Within 10 moves, Arya was on the defensive. Sloane leaned forward. That wasn't like her. She didn't see the second pin, Owen murmured. She's off today. 20 minutes passed. Arya's position worsened, and then checkmate. The word fell like a stone. Arya stared at the board, her mouth slightly open. She didn't speak. She didn't move. Mateo reached across the board, respectful. Good game, he said. Arya blinked, nodded, shook his hand. but her grip was limp. She stood slowly, her ribbon slipping from her lap to the floor without her noticing. Owen met her halfway, crouching down to her level. "Hey," he said gently. "You okay?" She looked at him with eyes brimming but dry. "I lost." "I know. I didn't see the fork. I thought I had it. You made a bold play. You took a chance. That's what champions do." Arya's voice trembled. "Champions win." Owen placed a hand on her shoulder. "No. Champions get back up." She shook her head. "I don't want to talk right now." Sloane approached quietly. "Sweetheart?" Arya turned her face away. "Please don't." Sloane froze mid-step, a wound flickering across her expression, raw and visible. She stepped back. Owen mouthed later and guided Arya out of the tournament room. They sat in their hotel room with the curtains drawn. Arya curled into the corner of the couch, arms hugging her knees, staring out the rain-covered window like the answers might be hiding in the clouds. Owen sat across from her with 2 mugs of hot cocoa untouched. He didn't speak for a while. Sometimes silence was the only rope that could pull a child back across the gap. Finally, Arya whispered, "I disappointed you." Owen sat forward. "Why would you say that?" "Because I didn't win." "Everyone expected me to. No one in this world has ever expected more from you than you expect from yourself." She looked down. "I failed," she murmured. Owen took a breath. Then slowly he reached into his wallet and pulled out a faded receipt. He unfolded it, careful and deliberate. "Know what this is?" Arya shook her head. "It's the receipt from the pawn shop where I bought our first chessboard. $8. I bought it the day you turned 4. We had leftover mac and cheese, and I lit a candle in it." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "You lost every game for months," Owen said. "You'd cry when you couldn't protect the king. But you never stopped showing up. You just kept learning." Arya looked up. "Why are you telling me this? Because that receipt isn't about money. It's about the moment I realized what you were capable of." He leaned forward. "I don't love you because you win. I love you because you try." The silence stretched. Then her voice broke. "I'm scared I'm not as good as everyone thinks." "Then show them what someone brave looks like." That evening, Sloane knocked gently on the hotel room door. Owen answered. Arya was curled under a blanket in the corner, reading. "I just want a minute," Sloane said quietly. Owen stepped aside. Sloane walked in cautious. "Arya." The little girl didn't look up. Sloane sat at the edge of the couch. "I wanted to say something," she said. "Not as someone who cares about your talent, but as someone who understands what it means to lose something, and not know who you are without it." Arya peeked at her. "I lost today," she said. Sloane nodded. "I've lost things that never came back." Arya closed her book, like what Sloane swallowed. "A family, a piece of myself, and once, I lost the chance to tell someone how much they meant to me." "Did they ever come back?" Sloane's voice cracked. "No." Arya looked at her for a long moment, and then quietly, "I'm not mad at you. I was just embarrassed." "You don't ever need to be embarrassed with me," Sloane said, reaching out to gently touch her hand. "Not for losing, not for feeling. Never." Arya's fingers curled around Sloane's slowly. It was a small gesture, but for Sloane Carrington it felt like being handed a key to a door she never thought she'd get to knock on again. Later that night, after Arya fell asleep, Owen walked Sloane to the hallway. "I appreciate what you said to her," he murmured. "She's stronger than I ever was," Sloane replied. "She's strong because she's had no other choice." They stood in silence. Then Sloane asked, "Would you think I was selfish? If I told her the truth someday," Owen didn't look away, "I'd think you were human." She nodded. "But not now," he said. "Let her play the next round with a clear head. Let her be a child before the world tells her who she belongs to." Sloane's voice was soft. "Do you think she'd forgive me?" Owen paused. "She forgives people easier than I do." She managed a faint smile. Noted. As she turned to go, he added, Sloane. She looked back. Thank you. For showing up. And for once, Sloane Carrington didn't answer with words. She just placed her hand over her heart, nodded, and walked into the quiet dark of the hallway, carrying something heavy but finally real. The New York skyline shimmered under a velvet night. Up on the rooftop terrace of the Grand Manhattan Hotel, the world below felt far away, like something you could fold into a pocket if you held still long enough. The wind was cool but not cold. The stars, blurred by city lights, still flickered stubbornly. Owen stood at the edge of the terrace, both hands on the stone railing, staring out at nothing. He heard the door open behind him. Then footsteps. Then silence. He didn't turn around. You waited long enough, he said. I thought maybe you'd let the truth rot in your throat. Sloane stepped beside him. She didn't speak. Not yet. I know, Owen said, his voice tight. I've known for a while now. Her eyes dropped to the floor. Her eyes, he continued. Her hands. The way she sees the world in structure and shapes but feels it with a softness most people forget how to carry. He finally looked at her. You gave that to her. Sloane's voice was barely audible. I don't deserve the credit. No, you don't, Owen said plainly, but you deserve the truth. And so does she. A long beat passed. Then Sloane whispered, I was 28. Fresh out of grad school. My father had just handed me a seat at the board. And then I got pregnant. She exhaled like something broke inside her. He told me if I didn't make it disappear, the board seat would. Owen stayed quiet. He let her say it. He didn't flinch. I tried to keep her, she said. I fought. But the world I lived in, it wasn't built for softness. It rewarded silence, obedience, control. Her voice cracked. So I signed the papers. I told myself she'd be better off not knowing me, that I'd only ruin her. And then Owen asked. I watched her grow up on newsprint scraps and old regret. I didn't know who had her, not until I saw you walk through those elevator doors. Owen stared at her for a long, cold moment. You could have told me then. I was terrified you'd shut the door. He looked back out at the city. I almost did. But you didn't, Sloane said softly. No, Owen murmured, because she's not a pawn in anyone's game, and because she deserves to know where she comes from, even if it hurts. Sloane turned toward him. Her voice was steadier now. Owen, I'm not trying to take her. I couldn't even if I wanted to. You don't have to take her, he said. She's not something you carry off. She's someone you stand beside if she lets you. The wind picked up, blowing her hair into her face. She didn't brush it away. Do you think she'll hate me? I think she'll ask why Owen said, and I think you'd better be ready to answer. Sloane nodded slowly. She said something to me the other night, she whispered. She said when she plays chess she feels like someone's guiding her, like there's a shadow hand helping her move the pieces. Owen blinked. She said, I don't know whose hand it is, but it feels like love. A quiet tremor passed through them both. She's stronger than either of us, Sloane said, her voice trembling, and softer. Somehow both. That's because she was raised in two worlds, Owen replied. One that forced you to choose between power and love, and one where love was the only thing we had. He looked at her and something in his eyes softened. I don't hate you, he said. Sloane looked away. I wish you would. It would be easier. I don't do easy, he said. I do aria. And right now she needs the truth, delivered by both of us. Together. She nodded again. Tomorrow. Sloane turned to leave, then hesitated. Do you ever regret taking her in? She asked quietly. Owen didn't even pause. Not for a second, he said. She didn't just save me. She made me worth saving. Sloane bit her lip. You were always worth saving, Owen. You just stopped believing it. Then she walked back toward the door, and Owen stood alone, wind pressing into his jacket, wondering how much a person could forgive when the wound was stitched together by love. Meanwhile, down in the hotel room, Arya couldn't sleep. She sat at the desk with the tournament flyer folded into a paper crane, her mind spiraling through every game she'd played, every piece she'd lost. She kept thinking about Mateo's eyes when he'd won, respectful but unreadable. She didn't want to be unreadable. She wanted to feel everything. Footsteps approached. It was Maria Sloane's longtime assistant who had brought Arya cocoa earlier. "Can't sleep?" Maria asked gently. Arya shook her head. "There's too much thinking." Maria smiled. "That's what happens to smart girls. Their minds don't know when to rest." Arya hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. What kind of person gives up their baby?" Maria blinked. Then she walked over, sat down slowly. "The kind of person who's broken," she said softly. "Or scared, or trapped, or just too young to know how much love can hurt when it's not enough." Arya nodded as if she had already known. "Do you think they wonder?" "Every day," Maria said. "Some don't stop wondering until they find their way back." Arya looked down at the paper crane. "And if they do, then you listen. And you decide. Not who they were, but who they are now." Arya folded the wings of the crane gently. "I think someone's trying to find their way back to me." Maria placed a hand over hers. "Then meet them halfway, little one." And with that, Arya looked toward the window, heart pounding. Something was coming. She didn't know what, but for the first time she wasn't afraid. The day of the finals dawned with pale gold light and a sky scrubbed clean by last night's rain. The city felt quieter somehow, like it too was holding its breath. In the grand atrium of the tournament hall, the final chessboard was already set. Spectators whispered from behind velvet ropes, journalists adjusted cameras, and tournament officials moved like clockwork. A hush of reverence lingered in the air. Arya stood at the edge of the room, her little hand gripping the strap of her backpack, her sneakers planted firmly on the marble floor. "You don't have to win to matter," Owen said gently, kneeling to adjust her sleeve. "I know," she whispered, "but it's okay if you still want to." She smiled faintly. "I do." A voice behind them interrupted. "Good morning." They turned. Sloane stood there, elegant, steady, but her eyes shimmered with something fragile. "May I speak with her before the game?" she asked Owen. He hesitated. Arya looked at him. "It's okay, Daddy." He nodded and stepped away. Sloane crouched down to Arya's level, her voice quiet and trembling. "I have something to tell you, Arya, and I need you to know that it's the truth even if it sounds strange." Arya's eyes were steady. "Okay." Sloane inhaled deeply. 8 years ago, I had a daughter. I was young. I was scared. I made choices I thought were right, but they weren't. I let someone else raise her believing she'd be better off without me." Arya's lips parted slightly. "That daughter was you." There was no sound. Not from the hall. Not from the world. Just the soft inhale of an 8-year-old girl trying to piece together a puzzle she didn't know she'd been given. "You're my mom?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Sloane nodded. "Yes." Arya blinked, then looked down at her hands. "I always thought I didn't come from anyone," she murmured. "But now, I came from someone who plays chess like fire." Sloane's voice broke. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know. Needed you to hear it from me." Arya looked back up at her eyes, clear but unreadable. "Why now?" "Because you deserve the whole truth before you walk onto that board. You deserve to know who you are, and where your strength comes from." Arya was quiet for a long moment. "Then I'm still playing as Arya Bennett." Sloane's throat tightened. "Of course, but maybe someday," Arya added softly, "I'll be Arya Bennett Carrington." Sloane's eyes filled with tears. "I'd be honored." A bell rang, signaling game time. Owen stepped forward. "You ready, kiddo?" Arya turned to them both. Can you sit together today? Owen looked at Sloane. She nodded. We'd like that. And for the first time, the three of them walked into the arena, not as strangers, not as secrets, but as something slowly forming into the shape of a family. Arya's opponent was Gabriel Cho, a 13-year-old from San Francisco, known for his speed and ruthless endgames. He had a coach, a publicist, and a look in his eye that said, "I don't lose." The game began. Move by move, the crowd leaned in. Owen and Sloane sat side by side in the front row, hearts pounding, watching Arya glide through the opening like a storm gathering strength. "She's calm," Sloane whispered. "She's in it," Owen replied. "This is her favorite place in the world." Mid-game, Gabriel launched a brutal queenside attack. For a moment, it looked like Arya had no defense. Then, quietly, confidently, she repositioned her knight. 2 moves later, the entire board shifted. Gasps rippled through the crowd. She reversed the pressure, one commentator whispered. At 8 years old. Sloane's hand instinctively reached for Owen's. He let her hold it. In the final 5 moves, the room fell utterly silent. Then, checkmate. A beat of stunned stillness. Then the hall erupted. The crowd stood. Reporters surged. The tournament director raised her hand like a champion in a boxing match. Arya didn't move. She just looked across the board at Gabriel and said, "Thank you for a great game." He nodded, dazed. "You're incredible." She smiled. "I just listened to the pieces." Backstage, Arya sat on a bench trophy resting beside her, arms folded across her chest. Owen knelt in front of her. "You did it." She shook her head. "We did it." Sloane stood nearby, eyes still glassy. Arya looked at her. "I'm mad at you," she said honestly. "A little bit." Sloane nodded, steady. "You're allowed to be. But I'm also glad you came back." Sloane blinked hard. "So am I." Owen smiled. "You want to go celebrate, champ." Arya grinned. "Can we get grilled cheese? That's all you want after becoming the youngest champion in tournament history," Sloane teased. Arya nodded. "That, and maybe a rematch." "Rematch?" Owen asked. "With who?" Arya leaned back smugly. "With both of you. 2-on-1. Let's see if you can keep up." They all laughed, and in that moment there were no missing pieces. No silence, no regrets. Just aboard a family and a girl who had found her place between 2 hearts, one that raised her and one that never stopped hoping she'd return. It was quiet in the car. New York shimmered behind them, lights fading as Owen's old sedan made its way down the interstate. Arya sat in the back seat, her fingers brushing against the handle of the tournament trophy beside her, but her eyes were far away. Owen glanced at her through the rear-view mirror. "You okay, kiddo?" She nodded, but she didn't speak. They had passed 3 exits before she said softly, "Daddy." "Can I ask you something?" Owen turned down the radio. "Always." She hesitated. "If I have 2 people who love me, who's my real mom?" His hands tightened on the steering wheel. He slowed the car, then took the next exit and pulled into a quiet rest stop parking under a flickering street lamp. He turned around in his seat to face her fully. "That's not a simple question, Arya." "I know," she whispered. He took a breath. "Let me tell you something, and I want you to really hear it. Can you do that for me?" She nodded. "You were born from Sloane's body, but you were raised by my heart. You have 2 people who would walk through fire for you, and that doesn't mean you have to pick one. Love doesn't ask you to choose sides. It asks you to open both hands." Arya blinked back tears. "But it feels like I'm in the middle of something that happened before I was even here." Owen reached for her hand. "You're not in the middle. You're the reason both sides are finally meeting." She swallowed hard. "Do you think she gave me away because she didn't want me?" "No," he said firmly. "She gave you away because she didn't believe she was strong enough to keep you. And that's not the same thing. Would you have kept me if you knew she was my mom?" Owen smiled softly. "I didn't care who your parents were, Arya. The day I held you in my arms, you became mine. That's the only truth I've ever needed." She looked down at her lap. She said she doesn't want to replace you. She couldn't if she tried, Owen said. And I wouldn't try to erase her either. Arya looked up at him, eyes wide. So, is it okay if I start calling her Mom? His throat tightened, but he nodded. It's okay, he said, as long as you never stop calling me Dad. She reached out and took his hand. Never, she said. And just like that, the space between them felt whole again. Back at the Carrington estate, Sloane stood in the nursery. Not the cold, unused one from years ago, but the new space she'd renovated just last week, a sunlit room with soft bookshelves, a writing desk, a chessboard in the corner, and a reading nook by the window. A place made for growth, not guilt. She was setting a framed photo of Arya's tournament win on the shelf when Maria entered with a tray of tea. She's sleeping at Owen's tonight, Maria asked gently. Sloane nodded. I didn't want to rush her. I want everything to move at her pace now. Maria set the tray down and crossed her arms. You know, I used to think you were the coldest woman I'd ever worked for. Sloane gave a tight smile. I probably was. But watching you look at that girl... Maria paused. I've never seen your face like that. Like you're breathing for the first time in years. I am, Sloane admitted. But it's terrifying. What if I don't know how to be a mother? What if I mess it all up again? Maria sat beside her on the window bench. You will mess it up. All parents do. But you love her. And that's the only thing worth getting wrong 100 times until you get it right. Sloane blinked back tears. She said she might call me Mom someday. And you're still standing here instead of crying into your $500 blouse. I cried already. Twice. Maria laughed. You're going to be just fine, she said. That weekend, Arya returned with a duffel bag, her trophy, and a new look in her eyes. Owen walked her up the Carrington driveway, hand in hand. At the door, Sloane greeted them with a soft smile. Hi, she said. I wasn't sure you'd come. Arya stepped forward. Can we talk in the garden? Sloane blinked. Of course. They walked out to the rose-lined pathway behind the house, just the two of them. Arya turned to face her. I've been thinking, she said, about what it means to forgive someone. Sloane stayed quiet. I don't think forgiveness means pretending nothing happened, Arya continued. I think it means looking at someone, remembering the hurt, and saying, I still want to try. Sloane's breath hitched. That's more wisdom than most adults I know. I didn't come here to be your daughter, Arya said honestly. I came here to get to know the woman who made me, and left me. And Sloane asked, her voice small, I think you've changed. I have. I think you're trying. Every day. Arya stepped closer. Then I want to try too. Sloane knelt down to her level, eyes shimmering. Whatever you're ready for, I'll meet you there. Arya hesitated. Then she reached out, wrapped her arms around her mother, and whispered one word, Mom. Sloane froze, then held her tight, not like she was clinging to something lost, but like she was finally holding something found. That evening, Owen joined them for dinner. Not as a visitor, not as a guardian, but as part of something new, fragile, and beautiful. They laughed over takeout, told stories about Arya's chessboard antics, and made a plan to create a community program for kids who couldn't afford lessons. At one point, Arya looked at them both. If you're my mom and dad, does that mean we're a family now? Sloane looked to Owen. Owen looked at Arya, and together they said, We're figuring that out. Arya grinned. Good, because I don't want to rush it. She picked up a night piece from the board nearby. Building a family's like learning a new opening, she said. You have to practice before you get good at it. And somehow that simple truth wrapped around all three of them like a promise. A promise that this wasn't just about where she came from, but where they were all going. Together. The wind swept through the community park, carrying with it the laughter of children and the sound of chess pieces being moved across picnic tables. Fold-out boards covered the grass under the shade of sycamore trees. A long banner flapped above the entrance. First Annual Citywide Youth Chess Outreach, sponsored by the Carrington Foundation and Area's Hope. Owen stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching as Arya crouched next to a little boy guiding him patiently through a Sicilian defense. "You don't have to rush," she said gently. "Just breathe. Chess is about thinking more than winning." The boy nodded, his brow furrowed with fierce concentration. Arya winked at him. "You've already got the look of a champion." Sloane walked up beside Owen with 2 iced lemonades in hand. "That's your line," she said, handing him one. He chuckled. "She steals the best ones. She's earned them." They stood there for a moment, shoulder to shoulder, watching the girl they both loved shape something bigger than herself. "It's strange," Sloane said after a while. "All my life I fought for control, structure, outcomes I could predict. And now," Owen asked, "now I find peace in the things I can't." She glanced at him, like how she came into our lives. Owen looked at her eyes, thoughtful. "You know, if someone had told me a year ago I'd be running a non-profit chess clinic with a billionaire CEO and an 8-year-old prodigy, I'd have asked them what they were drinking." Sloane smirked. "And now I'm wondering why it took so long to start." Their conversation was interrupted by applause. Arya stood and gave the boy a high five. He beamed with pride. Then she turned, catching their gaze. She ran toward them, ponytail swinging, and threw herself into Owen's arms. You saw that she asked, grinning. "Every move," Owen said. "You were brilliant." Arya turned to Sloane. "He told me he was scared of playing because he's not smart enough. So I told him what you told me once." Sloane raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" Arya took her hand. "That bravery is smarter than fear." Sloane's eyes shimmered. She knelt down and pulled Arya into a hug. "You've turned into someone I would have looked up to as a child." Arya giggled. "You can still look up to me now." "I do." They all laughed, and for a moment the world stood still in its quiet joy. Later that afternoon, after the event had wrapped and volunteers were folding up chairs, Owen sat alone at a table under the tree, writing something in a leather-bound notebook. Sloane approached quietly. "Writing again?" she asked. He looked up and smiled. "Trying to. Something about this place makes the words come easier." She glanced at the page. "What is it?" He hesitated, then offered her the open book. She read aloud. She wasn't a miracle because she played like one. She was a miracle because she made the people around her believe again, in second chances, in forgiveness, in a life that didn't have to be perfect, just honest. Sloane closed the notebook gently. "That's about her. It's about all of us," Owen said. "She just reminded us how to be better." They sat in silence for a while. Then Sloane turned to him. "Owen, have you ever thought about what comes next?" He looked at her. "For the foundation?" She smiled. "No, for us." The words hung in the air. Owen let them settle before he answered. "I've thought about it every day since you walked back into our lives." Sloane's voice softened. "And I think I'm scared." "Me too." He met her eyes. "But I also think we've earned something more than fear." She reached for his hand. "I don't want to rewrite the past," she said, "but I'd give anything to start a new chapter with both of you in it." Owen studied her. "Even if it's messy." She smiled. "Especially if it's messy." A breeze stirred the leaves above them. Somewhere in the distance, Arya's laughter rang out like wind chimes. He squeezed her hand. "Then, let's not waste another page." That evening, back at Owen's modest home, Arya sat cross-legged on the porch with her notebook open, scribbling diagrams of new chess openings. Her voice floated into the kitchen where Owen and Sloane stood cooking dinner together for the first time. "Dad, can we name the next opening?" After Mom, Owen looked at Sloane and grinned. "What do you think?" she called back. "Only if it's an aggressive one." Arya giggled. "It'll be a Queen's Gambit with attitude." As they laughed together, the doorbell rang. Maria stood there holding a bouquet of wildflowers and a bottle of wine. I heard we were celebrating something tonight, she said. Sloane pulled her into a hug. We're celebrating everything. Owen brought out 3 glasses, Arya clinked her juice against them with exaggerated pride, and they raised a toast. To forgiveness, Owen said. To family, Sloane added. Arya looked at both of them, and to the game that brought us together. They drank, and in that moment, without fanfare, without the sharp clang of checkmate, they knew they had won something far more lasting than any trophy. They had won each other. Autumn arrived gently that year. Golden leaves floated down like blessings over the Carrington estate, softening its once imposing stone facade. The air had that kind of crispness that made you breathe a little deeper, and inside the house that used to echo with silence laughter now spilled into the halls like music. In the sunroom, Arya sat cross-legged on a plush rug, a chessboard between her and Owen. She tapped a bishop with her fingertip. You know, I'm 3 moves away from ending you right, she teased. Owen raised an eyebrow. Oh, really? You sound awfully confident for someone who just sacrificed her queen. She grinned. That's not a loss. That's a distraction. Spoken like a true Carrington, Sloane called from the doorway holding 3 mugs of hot cocoa. Arya lit up. Extra marshmallows. Sloane winked. A mountain. She handed Owen his cup, then knelt beside Arya, wrapping an arm around her daughter's shoulder. The girl leaned into the embrace like it was second nature now, because it was. I was thinking, Arya said, eyes twinkling, maybe we could write a book. About all of this. Sloane tilted her head. All of this? Yeah, Arya nodded. Not just the tournament, but about finding each other. About how families can be made from broken pieces, like puzzles or chessboards. Owen looked at her for a long, tender moment. What would you call it? Arya's smile was soft. The last piece. Sloane's breath caught in her throat. Owen reached over, gently brushing a strand of hair from Arya's forehead. You always know how to land the final move. Arya shrugged playfully. Maybe, but only because you both taught me the game. Later that week, they hosted a dinner at the Outreach Center. Not for donors or press, just the people who had become family in quiet ways. Maria, the kids from the chess program, the janitor who always stayed late to lock up Mateo's family, and even Mrs. Jenkins from the corner bookstore who always slipped Arya extra bookmarks. There were folding tables covered in mismatched tablecloths, paper lanterns strung across beams, and the smell of roasted vegetables and fresh bread in the air. Sloane stood by the window watching Owen tell a group of teens about a time Arya beat him in 3 moves flat. Maria joined her carrying 2 glasses of sparkling cider. You've changed, Maria said, not unkindly. I know, Sloane replied, but not all at once. It was like learning to speak a language I used to know as a child, one I forgot I was fluent in. Maria handed her a glass. You remember it beautifully. From across the room, Arya waved them over. Speech time, she announced proudly. Everyone turned. Sloane and Owen exchanged a glance. You go, she whispered. No way, he whispered back. She clearly meant you. But Arya pointed to both of them. Together, they stood side by side, and Sloane took the mic first. I spent much of my life chasing legacy, she began. Success, reputation, control. But none of it mattered when I realized I'd given up the one thing that could have made me whole. She glanced at Arya. She didn't just find her way into our lives, she rearranged them. And in doing so, she gave us all a second chance. Owen stepped forward. We don't always get to choose how life begins, or who stays, or who leaves, but we do get to choose who we become every single day. He looked around the room, and sometimes, if we're lucky, love shows up again, in the most unexpected places, on a rainy Tuesday, in the form of a little girl who asks too many questions and plays chess like a hurricane. The room laughed warmly. Sloane placed her hand over his. Thank you for helping me believe that love doesn't expire. Owen smiled. and thank you for proving that people can grow toward each other, not just apart." They stepped back and Arya hopped up to the mic. "And I'd just like to say," she announced, "this family is not perfect, but it's mine. And it's the best opening move I've ever made." That night, after the guests had gone and the lights had dimmed, Owen and Sloane stood on the front porch of the center. Arya had fallen asleep, curled up on the office couch, still clutching her night piece. The stars were clear above them. No board, no audience, just quiet. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we never met?" Sloane asked softly. "All the time," Owen replied. "But then I remember something Arya said the other day." "What's that?" He turned to her. She said, "The best games aren't about crushing your opponent. They're about finding the ending that feels like it was always meant to be." Sloane leaned her head on his shoulder. "And this feels meant to be." He nodded. "More than anything in my life." They stood in silence, breathing in the moment. And in that silence, something settled. Not like a final move, but like the beginning of something that no longer needed to be defended or explained. A family, formed in fracture, strengthened in love, and held together not by perfection, but by presence, by choosing each other, again and again, checkmate, and finally, peace. Sometimes the most powerful love stories aren't about romance. They're about redemption, about a father who never gave up, a mother who found her way back, and a little girl who became the bridge between two broken hearts. If this story touched you, we'd love to hear where you're watching from. Drop a comment below whether you're from a small town or a big city. Your presence here means the world to us. And if you believe in second chances and family and hope, hit that subscribe button. We share stories like this every day, stories that lift the heart and remind us what really matters. Thank you for watching. From our story to your heart, we're so glad you're here.